Good afternoon. Welcome to Business 360, your complete view of the stories driving business, markets, and the economy. I'm Apa Ongpin, and this is the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Semirara Mining is challenging the Energy Department before the courts on demands to disclose what it calls proprietary mine data. The National Bureau of Investigation pushes back against accusations that its probe into the 2019 SEA Games is politically motivated, as others question the timing. The Philippines is moving towards a membership in the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. We bring in British Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines Executive Vice Chairman Chris Nelson. And Asian markets suffer a bloodbath on the chip sell-off. Semirara Mining is going to court to block the Energy Department's demand for its mine data. Jillian Geronimo has that and other corporate stories.
Semirara Mining and Power Corporation has sought court protection against the Department of Energy's demands for what the company calls proprietary mine data. SMPC warns that sharing its technical information with rival bidders could threaten operations at the country's largest coal mine and put the nation's power supply at risk. In a petition filed before a Makati court, SMPC challenged the DOE's repeated requests made through 4 separate letters for a comprehensive asset inventory, geological information, and technical specifications for the Semirara mine. The DOE is seeking Semirara's asset and technical information as the government prepares to bid out the coal blocks after the company's contract expires in 2027. The data is expected to help guide the bidding process and assess future operators. But SMPC says the assets remain under its ownership, citing its coal operating contract and Presidential Decree 972 or the Coal Development Act. It argues the information should not be given to competing bidders or included in their bid submissions. According to the petition, the government may only assume ownership if SMPC fails to remove the assets within 1 year after the contract expires. The company also raised safety concerns, saying the requested data includes specifications for pumps managing what it describes as river-strength water inflow at its Acacia mine. SMPC warned that if pumping stops, the pit could flood, and by the company's estimate, roughly half of the island's recoverable coal reserves would be lost. The listed firm clarified the case is not meant to delay the bidding, saying it remains committed to joining the auction and that mining operations continue as normal until July 2027. The DOE has yet to publicly respond to the petition. Prime Energy has completed maintenance work at the Malampaya gas project, restoring gas production after a month-long shutdown. The facility resumed gas delivery on July 15 after upgrades at its Palawan and Batangas operation. The maintenance prepared Malampaya for new wells expected to start producing gas in the 4th quarter of 2026. The new wells are expected to extend the project's productive life by up to 6 years. Malampaya has been a major source of indigenous gas for Luzon power plants for more than 2 decades. 6 directors of Manila Electric Company, among them Manuel V. Pangilinan and Lance Gokongwei, have received Meralco shares worth a combined 16.95 million pesos. Separate disclosures showed Pangilinan, Gokongwei, Ray Espinosa, Lydia Echauz, Patrick Henrigo, and Victorio Vargas each received 5,000 Meralco shares on July 13. Each grant was valued at around 2.82 million pesos, based on share prices ranging from 562 pesos to 571 pesos and 50 centavos apiece. The 6 directors received a total of 30,000 shares. The filing stated the shares were acquired through a stock grant, indicating they were given as incentives rather than bought on the open market. Insiders at Jollibee Foods are again moving in opposite directions in the stock market. Hyperdynamic Corporation, an affiliate of Jollibee founder Tony Tan Kak Chong, bought more than 208,000 JFC shares on July 16, worth about 31.15 million pesos. On the same day, Director Antonio Chua Poing, Tan Kak Chong's brother-in-law, sold 135,000 shares through Honeyworth Corporation, worth about 20.19 million pesos. So far in July, Po has sold shares worth roughly 73 million pesos, while Hyperdynamic has bought about 71.6 million pesos worth. The operator of 7-Eleven says rising inflation and slower economic growth could weigh on consumer spending, even as its own sales keep climbing. Philippine 7 Chairman Victor Paterno called the government's revised economic outlook a matter of concern, though he said the company has yet to feel any significant impact on its business. Economic managers have lowered the 2026 growth target to between 3.5 and 4.5%, while raising the inflation forecast to a range of 6 to 7%. Paterno said inflation doesn't hit all retailers equally. Sellers of packaged goods, he said, can more easily pass higher costs to consumers and may even benefit when suppliers raise prices. He added, tougher economic conditions may have pushed consumers toward more affordable options, benefiting convenience stores. For Business 360, Jillian Geronimo, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Philippine Stock Exchange Index rode against the chip sell-off, hurting global markets. The PSEI closed strong today by over 1%, with property and holding firms gaining more than 2%. Ayala and Ayala Land each got a boost of more than 5%. Ayala purchased more than 2.5 million Ayala Land common shares today at an average price of around 16 pesos per share. Globe also finished strong by nearly 3%. First it was the Kospi, now it's most Asian stocks suffering sharp losses on the chip sell-off. Japan's Nikkei 225 dropped more than 4%. China's Shanghai Composite over 3%. And Taiwan's TAIEX, the biggest loser, down 6.5%. The Kospi was closed today on holiday. Investors were spooked after the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company said it would pour another $100 billion into its chip plants in Arizona and raised its spending plans for the year. Investors are worried that all that spending will eat into margins. They also shrugged off a 77% jump in profits. Wall Street stocks plummeted on the chip sell-off. All major indexes fell, with the tech-heavy Nasdaq down nearly 1.5%. The Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company had sparked the sell-off, although other memory chip makers also lagged. More stories when we return. Business 360. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Business 360. I'm Apa Ongpin. Calls are growing for the government to suspend fuel excise taxes as another round of big-time price hikes looms next week. Ches Sulit reports.
Motorists and businesses may have to brace for another round of sharp fuel price increases next week. Based on the first 4 trading days of the Mean of Platts Singapore or MOPS and foreign exchange averages from July 13 to 16, the following pump price adjustments are projected. Diesel may increase by up to 10 pesos and 50 centavos per liter, and gasoline may increase by over 4 pesos and 50 centavos per liter. The renewed hikes are adding to the growing cost pressures already faced by consumers and entrepreneurs. Jetty Petroleum President Leo Bellas says that global oil prices remain elevated as tensions continue to escalate between the United States and Iran, with fears of further supply disruptions. The risk premium in the oil market also increased following Iranian attacks on commercial ships, followed by retaliatory U.S. strikes on Iranian military assets. Prices were also pushed higher by a sharp decline in vessel traffic through the strait and the U.S. naval blockade of ships traveling to and from Iranian ports.
Now, the signals are a bit leaning on the possibility na umakyat pa, no? Especially now that there's another threat from Iran that in the event that the power industry or power network of Iran would be hit, they have asked for Houthis or the Yemen to block the Red Sea, which is another outlet actually for oil, no?
Despite government assurances that the country has enough fuel supply, Bellas explained that adequate inventories only protect the Philippines from physical shortages. They do not shield consumers from higher international prices, as the country remains dependent on imported crude oil and refined petroleum products. The Department of Energy earlier said the Philippine National Oil Company will hold off on further emergency fuel purchases for now. Energy Secretary Sharon Garin explained the global supply chain is currently functioning. The Philippines previously procured 4 diesel shipments totaling 1.12 million barrels. Meanwhile, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry said the expected fuel price hike would add to the series of cost increases already weighing on businesses. PCCI Vice President for Trade and Industry Brian Ang said businesses are already bracing for several problems hounding the sector. These include the 85 peso minimum wage increase in Metro Manila, the weakening peso, higher raw material costs, and possible increases in electricity charges. Ang said small and medium enterprises are particularly vulnerable because they cannot easily pass on higher operating costs to consumers.
Ang negosyante, maraming pain points pa rin. Diba? Ang dami niyang gastos in addition, not just wages, kuryente, fuel. Diba? Tapos ang problema, hindi ka naman makapagtaas ng presyo kasi yung demand side, wala naman pero yung consumer to fund any increase in prices.
Amid the expected price surge, both Bellas and Ang called on the government to consider suspending excise taxes on fuel. Ang also called for some form of financial or tax relief for MSMEs, noting that targeted subsidies should also reach business owners and commercial transport sectors. The projected pump price adjustments may still change after the final trading day of the week. Oil companies are expected to announce their official price movements on Monday, ahead of implementation on Tuesday, July 21. For Business 360, Che Sulit, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Energy Regulatory Commission extends the suspension of electricity disconnections for another 3 months. Power distributors across the country remain barred from cutting off electricity service for unpaid bills covering the August to October billing period. Customers will also be allowed to pay their bills through staggered payment plans. The ERC says the extension is meant to shield consumers from power cutoffs as electricity prices remain high. Shipping activity in the Strait of Hormuz remains low as tensions between Iran and the United States persist. Maritime data showed only 13 commercial vessels passed through the key waterway on Wednesday, about 1/10 of normal levels. Some analysts said actual traffic may be higher as some ships may have turned off transponders or tracking devices. The White House said Iran continues to engage in talks with the U.S., but accused Tehran of violating a recent agreement by attacking commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. insists the strait remains open for non-Iran-bound vessels, with the U.S. Navy monitoring the area.
Iran very much continues to talk to the United States of America and express that they want to make a deal with us because they are suffering devastating blows on behalf of our United States military. The reason, and this is important for the American people to understand, the reason for the recent strikes over the course of the last several days is because Iran violated the Memorandum of Understanding that we struck with them. Specifically, in the Memorandum of Understanding that they signed, they were not to fire on commercial vessels moving through the Strait of Hormuz. And unfortunately, they have made the tragic decision for them to do that.
The NBI is pushing back against claims that its probe into the 2019 Southeast Asian Games is politically motivated. Andrea Salve reports.
National Bureau of Investigation Director Melvin Matibag has defended the agency's fact-finding probe into the 2019 Southeast Asian Games, saying he was surprised by Senator Alan Peter Cayetano's reaction, even though he did not mention the senator by name when he announced the investigation last Tuesday. Matibag also denied that the probe is a form of intimidation against a senator judge after Cayetano questioned the timing of the NBI chief's announcement during the Senate impeachment court proceedings.
Unang-una, hindi naman tayo ang akusado doon sa proceedings na yon. Yung proceedings na yan ay ako ay tatayo lamang testigo. At based on the pre-trial order, ako ay testigo not only for the prosecution but also for the defense. So hindi ko po alam saan nanggagaling yung sinabi na tayo ay nananakot or kung ano pa man.
Matibag said the investigation will focus on the use of public funds allocated to the Philippines Southeast Asian Games Organizing Committee, or FISGOC, which handled the 2019 SEA Games under the leadership of then Chairman and then House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano. The NBI is also looking into reports that the public funds used to finance FISGOC, a privately formed non-government organization, may not have undergone the required liquidation and audit.
Ano pa ba yung mga ititingnan natin? May mga pumasok na donasyon, may pumasok na mga donasyon ng mga sports equipment, mga in-kind, may mga nagbigay ng donasyon na pumasok. There are allegations na mga may pondo nang galing sa confidential funds. So titingnan po natin lahat yan.
Meanwhile, in his latest Facebook livestream Thursday, Cayetano responded to Malacanang and the Department of Justice, which both defended the NBI's investigation. The senator said he welcomes a thorough probe of the 2019 SEA Games while challenging the government to also investigate flood control projects.
Imbestigahan niyo yung Southeast Asian Games of 2019 kung saan tayo nag-overall champion at tinangala ng buong Southeast Asia. Imbestigahan nyo ng husto, bigay nyo lahat. We will support totally. Tapos, ako naman, 10 ng aming mga kasama na ngayon ay nasa minority, imbestigahan naman namin ang flood control. Deal?
On the other hand, Matibag said he is praying for Cayetano while stressing that no one is above the law. He earlier maintained that the NBI's fact-finding probe is not politically motivated, saying its timing is merely incidental. Andrea Salve, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
House Prosecutor Representative Joel Chua says the NBI's reinvestigation into the alleged anomalies in the 2019 SEA Games projects should be viewed separately from the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte.
Wala naman ako nakikitang koneksyon. But then again, syempre, with all due respect sa ating mga senator judges, ang magkapatid na Cayetano, syempre, nandoon yung kanilang agam-agam, no? So, at hindi mo rin naman masisisi silang dalawa. But then again, kung ang tanong ay ito ba ay dapat gawin ng NBI, ako wala naman ako nakikita na dahilan para hindi naman nila gawin yan. In fact, sa amin nga, may mga clamor din na imbestigahan naman yung mga parmali, which is matagal nang naging issue, di ba? Pero sa ngayon, dito muna tayo na nakapokus. Although hindi ko nakikita pa yung koneksyon nitong investigasyon kay Senator Cayetano dito sa impeachment. Dahil kami, ang focus namin dito lang muna sa impeachment.
Okay. I think...
More stories when we return. Business 360. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Business 360. I'm Apa Ongpin. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. secures investment commitments during his working visit to Singapore. He met with Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, as well as business executives and regional investors discussing cooperation in artificial intelligence, among others. The president cited commitments from Singaporean telco Cignal Group and private equity firm ABC Impact. He also bannered the country's upgrade as an upper middle income country before Singaporean investors.
As a newly designated upper middle income country with solid macroeconomic fundamentals, the Philippines offers a secure, transparent, and stable environment for businesses to thrive.
The Philippines is taking steps towards possible membership in the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's a long acronym, but it's a major trade pact that could open new markets and boost investments. But what would membership mean for the Philippine economy? British Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines Executive Vice Chairman Chris Nelson joins us from Portugal. Good afternoon from Manila, Chris.
And good morning from Portugal.
Chris, the Philippines has now entered preparatory discussions for CPTPP accession. What does the UK see in the Philippines as a potential CPTPP member? And what does Britain specifically stand to gain from such an accession?
As you rightly said, it's one of the longest acronyms, CPTPP. The UK has been a strong supporter of the Philippines joining, and also, of course, the British Chamber along with that. CPTPP represents about 15% worldwide of GDP, so it's a very large and important trading bloc. And I think this will give the Philippines access to further opportunities, particularly on supply chain, particularly on potential foreign direct investment with companies looking at that. And we believe it's a way forward for the Philippines, similarly how we supported them joining the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP. And I think companies who are based here would like to see the Philippines join because that would also help them in terms of access. So I think the preparatory talks of the Philippines is taking place is a very important development. There, along, I believe, the other applicants is Indonesia and the UAE. So we strongly support it, and it will definitely, once obviously membership, and this is just the beginning, if they exceed, then it will certainly help trade and investment.
Okay, what's the biggest obstacle between where the Philippines is today and actually becoming a member?
I think, Apa, they're going to have to do discussions. The CPTPP is based on high-level, very transparent trading arrangements, investments, and so forth. So they'll be looking at what the Philippines has in place. There'll be inputs, as I understand it, probably requests from inputs from companies to see what the opportunities they see. So I think the Philippines needs to look at that. I would link it, and I don't say this is specific to CPTPP, but there have been regulatory improvements. We'd like to see that continuing. I'd like to point out, though, again, I don't think that's mainly specific to CPTPP, but we'd like to see some key legislation passed. And specifically, we'd like to see the Cybersecurity Act passed, which we think is critically important. And I think that will be a boost, not just to the trading, but also to, obviously, security. The Philippines is susceptible to that, as is countries across the world. And at the same time, we'd like to see the Open Finance Act passed. As mentioned in one of your earlier articles, the Philippines has just joined the upper middle class income bracket, and that's a good move. But to further support that, we need things like the Open Finance Act to be passed. So legislation, I think, is key, supporting overall that drive to get the Philippines to be a membership.
Okay, so it's still a long road, I guess. CPTPP membership would mean lower tariffs and simpler trading rules, but is market access really the Philippines' biggest problem? Or is it infrastructure, logistics, energy, and regulatory uncertainty? Aren't these the bigger barriers to investment?
I think it's a combination of all those factors you've mentioned rightly, Apa. I think CPTPP would be a boost as the joining of RCEP was also a great help. However, the Philippines has got challenges. Some of it, let's be very clear, not of its own making. Clearly, the energy issue is driven by the Middle East conflict. Those macroeconomic challenges the Philippines has to deal with. What the Philippines are also looking at, as we've noted, is inflation at a higher level than as previously and above, obviously, the 2 to 4% target of the Banco Central. And at the same time, growth rates dipping below what has been traditional, which is 5% and above. So in that context, I think infrastructure is important. Supply, in that context, I'd like just to refer to the work we've done on food supply. Food is very critical to the inflation index. And I'm pleased to say that we've been helping in that with our partner in UK, HDB, on supplying particularly high quality British pork and beef to the market, which helps on inflation. And we'd like to see that continuing, and that's growing. So you're right to put it there. But I think it's also important what the Philippines is doing is to join more of these trading areas. As I stressed, it is preparatory talks. Very difficult to project how long it would take before the Philippines can accede, but it's a very important step and another good signal to investors. The Philippines is very keen to get investments and for boosting its trade, both exports and imports.
Okay, if the Philippines does eventually join CPTPP, which sectors could benefit first and which domestic industries would face the greatest competitive pressure?
Well, I think the first sector that would clearly benefit is the service sector. The Philippines has clearly been leading in the services. Business outsourcing obviously is a key strength, and I think that will definitely get a push. Sectors that will be under pressure, I mean, I think when you look at any trading relationship, you have to look at the fact that obviously if tariffs get lowered, then this works both ways. If I refer specifically to the area I referred to, which is our work in terms of helping food supply and food security, I think that would also be another boost for that and make obviously the market competitive, particularly on agriculture. But in that context, let me be clear, I think that inflation is also a big factor and the Philippines needs supply. So I think overall the Philippines will be a benefit. Investment will come in. I think also companies, and I think this is a very important factor that I just want to stress. When we work with companies in the UK, Apa, we stress to them that the Philippines is a very important market in its own right. However, it also is an access to Southeast Asia. And obviously RCEP has reinforced that. If the Philippines is successful joining CPTPP, and we sincerely hope it will be, then that gives those companies even more access. So I think that's a very critical point. And while there will be more competition, overall it's going to be a clear benefit and winner for the Philippine economy and drive it higher. And again, let me refer back to the improved performance. The Philippines is now an upper middle income country. Okay, great. In terms of exports, the Philippines apparently already has tariff-free access to the UK for 92% of the products under the Developing Countries Trading Scheme. So what additional commercial advantage would CPTPP membership actually deliver for these exporters specifically, but also for the country as a whole? Well, I think, first of all, there's a few points we have to note. First of all, as you rightly said, that's under the developing countries' tariffs. My understanding is if you continue to grow in terms of your income bracket, then obviously those tariffs may change because you're no longer a developing country. That's one. But of course, if you're in a trading scheme, then you can benefit from what those trading schemes have, such as RCEP and, of course, CPTPP. The next point is CPTPP widens significantly the area of opportunity for the Philippines in terms of exports and also potential for companies doing business. So that's an opportunity for foreign direct investment. So the Philippines can benefit here by exporting to a greater area. It also has the opportunity to further segment so its goods continue to trade on a competitive basis. So overall, I think that's why CPTPP is very important. We support the application. We hope that the Philippines and the Department of Trade and Industry are going to be successful. And as you've seen in statements made prior to the announcement of the preparatory talks, this is supported by the UK government. And of course, also the British Chamber has consistently advocated for this.
Mm-hmm. Is CPTPP accession actually a factor in British companies' investment decisions today? Are there companies waiting for membership before committing capital or more capital, or are other concerns more important?
I think I have to be very fair. I think at the moment, CPTPP is in the preparatory stage. I've had questions asked about when the Philippines may be able to exceed and become a member, and that can be important for some. But I think for now, the companies are looking at it. We were pleased to see if there is a questionnaire and a request to come. We'll see how they respond and give their inputs, because I think that's important. However, I think other factors are still more critical at the moment for them. What they're looking at, as I said, is legislation. I think is critically important. Passing key legislation, I mentioned two: cybersecurity, the Open Finance Act, I think the Digital Payments Act, and also the Blue Economy Act are all very important. And in that context, let me link it, if I may. We fully understand the importance of the work of the Senate, which are obviously occupied with the impeachment trial. But one concern which I've expressed previously is the speed to pass key legislation, priority legislation. So I would just like to reinforce that message. I think that's important for our things. The other thing which I think is critically important is further reducing red tape. We're an ARTA champion. We work closely with the department, and we fully support their work. And we'd like to see that continuing, because the more that progresses, the easier it is to get companies to come in, particularly small to medium-sized enterprises. So in summary, Apa, CPTPP will be important, but the decision-making now driving things is how easy can I do business in the Philippines? What is the work going on? And what is the legislation which is going to further support, such as cybersecurity, Securas, Open Finance, which will further assist the overall population and further hopefully drive more of them into that upper middle class income bracket, which makes the market even more attractive as an opportunity for companies.
UK-Philippine trade reached £3.2 billion in the last year, the end of 2025. But the Philippines remains only the UK's 59th largest trading partner. What needs to happen for this relationship to move from promising to genuinely significant?
No, agreed. I mean, it's been great to see that grow, and it has grown significantly. If you look at the five top, as I said, what we've been specifically involved in is our work with the HDB. So number 5 now is meat and meat preparations. And we're happy to see that continuing to grow. And we appreciate the work we also do with the Department of Agriculture. And we look forward to them issuing the rules on the minimum access volume, which we've been advocating for. I think going forward, we constantly need to see the Philippines highlighted. The Philippines needs to keep on as much as it can do. Last year, we had an investment forum that was held actually at the headquarters, sponsored by HSBC, one of our members, and it was with PEZA, the Philippine Economic Zonal Authority, and they had the Director General Panga. That is a very important thing. I think the work we do there will drive business ultimately. We need to do that on a much more consistent and regular basis. We need to highlight those opportunities and drive the Philippines. We're looking obviously to get the Philippines to be a higher number, beyond 59. We're pleased to see the overall trade has reached over 3 billion. And I'm sure this is the work done by ourselves, the British Chamber, by obviously the British Embassy, led by our Ambassador Sarah Holton, and of course, the Department of Business and Trade. And we specifically have a Trade Commissioner based in Singapore, which is Martin Kent, his deputy Rhiannon Harris, all of which is working together. And let me also highlight the fact that the Philippines is, of course, chairman of the moment for all the work in ASEAN, so it's chair of ASEAN this year. And that will also bring an renewed focus, and there will be meetings, of course, here linked to ASEAN. So I think all of that, if we can get it together, we look forward to driving that number higher and make the Philippines and the UK an even stronger partnership than it is today.
Okay. Well, you know, we have a lot in common. We both kind of speak English. If you had to identify one reform the Philippine government could make right now to attract significantly more British investment, what do you think it would be?
Well, I think overall and we've seen that move forward, and that is obviously, of course, on ownership. The Philippines has moved in that direction on foreign direct ownership. I think that has an important factor. Recently, I believe they moved forward in terms, again, on the PESA zone, in terms of giving a longer lease period. But the more that can work in that area and highlight those reforms, I think that's a great signal to send, along with the further work, as I said, that we've been doing with ARTA to reduce red tape. The more we can make ease of doing business opportunities, that's going forward. And also encouraging companies and highlighting the success. Again, I have to come back to the work we've specifically done, and I'd like to thank our trade partner, HDB. Since 2021, both either virtually or in person, we've had 8 trade missions with them, and we're also discussing again, they're going to be coming again this year. That highlights relationship and partnerships. So again, in conclusion, Apa, it's further opening up the economy, allowing higher ownership by foreign companies or foreign businesses, letting them participate also in the infrastructure, and further reducing that red tape.
Yeah. Okay. That's a bit of a tall order because, as you know, the restricted list is in the Constitution, right? It can be changed. Certainly, there's no reason why we can't have power utilities that are pretty much wholly owned by foreign companies now, no? And communications has also been opened up. And these are 2 areas where Britain is very advanced in terms of technology, especially renewable energy.
Correct. And let me just say on that respect, renewable energy, my understanding is you can have 100% ownership. And that's a very good move. And I think the UK is looking at those areas. Also, I just want to highlight, this is over 80, I think this is the 80th year of diplomatic relations between the 2 countries. So that's a highlight. And I think all these discussions, the other thing I'd like to just point out that I think since last year, the trading relationships between the 2 countries has been upgraded to what we call a Joint Economic Committee, another acronym, I'm afraid, known as JETCO. And they had the first meeting last year, March. That was led by Undersecretary Alan Gepty. And there's a possibility, obviously, there'll be another meeting this year. We don't know where that will be. Maybe it'll be here in the Philippines. But I'm sure it shows you the growing relationships between the 2 countries. And yes, it is a tall order. There have been improvements. We need to keep that momentum going forward. The more we can get things passed, the more we can communicate, highlight to companies, and drive that continued interest that the Philippines is very well open for business. It is your opportunity for a market of well-educated consumers. And as you said, English is widely spoken. And also its access to Southeast Asia through RCEP and hopefully very shortly, or as much as we can, to CPTPP.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chris Nelson. That was very informative and, quite optimistic about our, progressing relationship with the UK.
Like, I've lived in the Philippines over 23 years. My wife is from the Philippines. My children are dual citizens. I have a long support and investment in the country. I think there's great opportunities, and I think we can now work hard together, actually move forward. So yes, optimistic, but also realistic. Thank you for your time as well, and for your viewers to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. More stories when we return. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back to Business 360. I'm Apa Ongpin. The Department of Finance sold a part of the atrium of Makati, a government-owned idle asset, for ₱1 billion. The sale covered the building's 5th floor with 24 condominium units and 21 parking slots. Sampiro Realty Development Corporation bought the property as part of its plan to consolidate ownership of the building. The deal price was more than double the property's appraised value of nearly ₱450 million. The sale raised the government's privatization revenues to ₱1.87 billion in the first half of 2026, exceeding the full-year target by nearly 150%. The Philippine government condemned China Daily's AI-generated content that depicted Filipinos as monkeys over the South China Sea dispute. The Department of Foreign Affairs called the material dehumanizing, racist, and unacceptable. The DFA argued disagreements over the 2016 South China Sea Arbitral Award should not lead to offensive imagery or misinformation. The agency said such content could further damage trust between the Philippines and China. The government called for the removal of the offensive material and urged respectful public discourse. The U.S. dollar is headed for a weekly loss, a potential boost for the Philippine peso. The dollar index is down 0.24% this week. Traders have scaled back bets on an imminent Federal Reserve rate hike on softer than expected inflation data, but renewed U.S.-Iran hostilities have kept the dollar supported as a safe haven asset. Global wheat prices surge as Russia and Ukraine escalate attacks in the Black Sea. Ukraine said it struck nearly a dozen Russian vessels, while Russia reported attacks on Ukrainian vessels and port infrastructure. The fighting is restricting shipping in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov, key export routes for two of the world's biggest grain suppliers. King Charles, in other news, King Charles of the United Kingdom serves up a royal toast with a cheeky joke after England's World Cup heartbreak. Here's his reaction to the big semi-final loss to Argentina.
Maybe it's a good day to drown a few sorrows.
The Philippine men's rugby union team stays on course for a title repeat after cruising past Singapore in the Union's Cup semifinals. Sheila Salaysay has more on the game and their dominant second-half display.
The Philippine men's rugby team is just one win away from defending their crown after booking a return trip to the Union's Cup final. The defending champions overpowered Singapore with a dominant second-half display to keep their title hopes alive. The Volcanoes advanced the Union's Cup 2026 final after defeating Singapore 33-10 at the NK Rafa pitch in Thailand. It was a closely fought contest early on, with the Volcanoes holding a narrow lead at halftime. However, the defending champions came out firing in the second half, shutting down Singapore's attack while capitalizing on scoring opportunities to pull away. Vince Young, Ned Stephenson, Judd Greenhall, and Michael Blaitis all scored tries for the Philippines. Blaitis delivered one of the game's biggest highlights with a coast-to-coast sprint that showcased the Volcanoes' pace and attacking flair. Ryan Curtis also made his presence felt, converting key kicks, including a difficult touchline conversion that helped the Philippines build an unassailable lead. Several Filipino standouts also played key roles in the victory, including Harvey Dent, Jovan Masalunga, Fausto Ismendi, Ardiel Lapid, and J.M. Cadenas, who continued their strong form after helping the Barbarian side defeat Laos earlier in the tournament. The Volcanoes opened their title defense with a dominant rout of Laos before eliminating Singapore to secure another finals appearance. The Philippines will now face a tournament newcomers Malaysia in the Union's Cup 2026 final on Saturday, July 18 at 5 p.m. Philippine time at Nonthaburi Stadium in Thailand. The championship match marks the Volcanoes' second straight Unions Cup final appearance after lifting the title in the previous edition, with a victory over Thailand as they now aim for back-to-back championships. Sheila Salaysay, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Politics can be serious business, but who says making sense of it has to be boring? BNC's new public affairs show, What's the Point?, is putting a fresh spin on the issues. Deputy Speaker Ronnie Puno and comedian Alex Calleja team up to break down the stories behind the headlines, with a little humor on the side. On BNC's The Spokes, Calleja joked that politicians have become his toughest competition, with political drama sometimes delivering punchlines of its own.
Bakit pala tinanggap bilang co-host ni Congressman Ronnie Puno sa What's the Point?
Pera-pera lang.
Tama! Alam mo, buti kaya mo sabihin yan. Ikaw, idea mo.
Hindi, comedian ako eh.
Idea mo ba yun?
Pwede ka naman magsabi ng joke. What's the Point? Every Tuesday, 8 to 9 p.m. with Kong Ronnie Puno. Ang tawag sa kanya, Tito Ron.
Tito Ron.
Kasi ang turon, di ba malaman yan, may saging kaya Tito Ron. So, yan. Kung gusto nyo maintindihan, hindi kami after the headlines, after kami kung ano ba talaga yung laman ng headlines.
Beyond the jokes, the show aims to help viewers understand the bigger picture behind the issues that shape the country. Catch What's the Point every Tuesday, 8 to 9 p.m. only on BNC. And that's Business 360. We'll keep tracking the moves that matter across markets, policy, and the economy. I'm Apa Ongpin. Thank you for joining us. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.